Welcome back to another episode of the Fifth Quarter Podcast. I'm your host, Marcus Jones, the Bluff City Cowboy, coming to you live from Memphis, Tennessee. I hope you guys had a happy holiday and a Merry Christmas. I hope that painful loss did not bring down your holiday season too much. Got to put it in the back of our minds. Look ahead to this week's huge matchup against the Detroit Lions. Thank you guys for joining. I see the views are getting up there pretty quickly. So I'm going to ask you guys to do a couple things from a little bit of house cleaning before we get the show started. First of all, thank you for joining us, Amanda. Appreciate you tuning in the comments. B. Neil Christian, becoming a regular on the show. So thank you for tuning in. Got my guy Stephen White joining us as always. Appreciate you tuning in. And we got Ryan at DC Downer. Thank you. Hope everyone had a good holiday also. And we got my guy Jeff joining us. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate you tuning in as well. And we got Hector Rosario tuning in also. Thank you for joining. So before we get the show started, I'm going to ask you guys, I see the views are going up there pretty quickly. Let's get those likes to match the views. So if you're watching right now and you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that like button if you're watching us on Facebook. And also, if you haven't joined the DC4L Facebook groups, make sure you type in DC4L in the comments. Join those groups. A lot of great conversations, a lot of great prizes, and just a large community of diehard Cowboys fans talking Cowboys football. And once again, if you haven't done so already from my Facebook watchers, be sure to go to YouTube, find me, Bluff City Cowboys, hit that subscribe button, also hit that bell so that you'll be updated for any future episodes as I work my way towards 1,000 subscribers. Thank you guys for joining us. Question the answers. Looks like a new name, so thank you for tuning in. Definitely appreciate your support. Got a lot to talk about tonight. Still feeling a little bit under the weather, but I'm feeling a lot better than I did last week. So I'm looking forward to having a really good show. Unfortunately, we have to start the show off on a bad point. Had a very physical, hard-fought game against the Miami Dolphins last week. And unfortunately, we came up on the short end of the straw with a loss of 22-20. So we're going to start the show off. We're going to do a quick recap of last week's game. Then we're going to move ahead and talk about the game against the Detroit Lions. And as always, the Fifth Quarter Podcast is fueled by you guys. So if you have any questions or any comments throughout the course of the show, be sure to get in the chat. I'll put your question up here. We can talk about it, and then we can go through. So I see we got Chris Gentner joining us. Looks like Chris is coming in with a lot of criticism and negativity. Looks like the Grinch spirit still sticking with him from December 25th. But I'll put your comment up there, Chris, and thank you for tuning in. He says, put a fork in the Cowboys. They're done. Mike McCarthy has no discipline. Too many penalty. Every game gets out coach. His play call is skeptical, and Jerry Jones is clueless. Sounds like a very irritated Cowboys fan. I understand your sentiment, Chris. Appreciate you tuning in. But I don't think it's as bad as you want to make it out to be. There's been a lot of stuff going on that was positive this season. A lot of changes have happened that have gone in the right direction. I see you put a lot of extremes in your comments. So I think the grass is a little bit greener than you think, Chris Gentner. And once again, thank you for tuning in. Appreciate your comment. Continue to leave comments, and we'll continue to talk about them. So let's go ahead. Let's look ahead to this past week's game against the Miami Dolphins. I got a couple of notes that I want to talk about. And then if you guys have anything you want to talk about, we can go from there. So let's do a quick game recap from Miami versus Dallas.
Game recap.
Oh, so as you guys know, hard-fought matchup. Had the lead with less than 3 minutes to go, 20-19. We put it in our defense's hands to get a stop. Unfortunately, the drive started off with a bad penalty, And from there, the Dolphins marched in the field goal range, kicked the field goal, and that was pretty much all she wrote in that game. Definitely was a nail biter, just like Jeff said. Back and forth game. Had several opportunities to win it. Unfortunately, we couldn't come through in the end. Just like Stephen White said, these are tough games. I thought it was an awesome game. Hate losing it. I agree with you, Stephen White. I thought it was a really good game. I think two things as Cowboys fans. Number one, we watch every play, every snap. We read every article. We know everything there is to know about the Dallas Cowboys. That's a great thing as a fan. The bad part about it is you know everything. So now you are putting every single thing under a microscope and you're comparing it to sometimes unrealistic expectations from what you saw 5 years, 10 years, 20 years ago, instead of looking at it for what it is right now for this team and as it compares to other teams. So I think a lot of fans deal with that. And every time we have a 3 and out, or every time there's a incompletion, we just lose our minds over it. When in the grand scheme of things, it's all about how you perform and how you get that W and what happened to make you get that L. Stephen White saying my TV froze when Pollard caught the pitch first drive. I missed the fumble. Yeah, I actually missed the fumble live also. Maybe we were on the same network, Stephen White, because I also missed that big play. So I got a couple offensive notes, couple defensive notes. We'll start off with the offensive notes first. And overall, the offense was solid. It wasn't great because, of course, they were almost 10 points less than their season average. So you definitely got a lot of skepticism, I mean, a lot of criticisms to have towards that game. First thing I noticed looking at the game, we had Edoga playing left tackle. The edges were rushing wide on both sides. And also their defensive tackles were doing a lot of wide rushing. And the team ran a lot of cover 2 zone. I say all that because that leads to a recipe of the middle of the field being wide open. You saw a lot of completions go across the middle of the field. You saw Dak with the big run up the middle. I think the team should have run the ball more, specifically with draw plays, because the middle of the field was open after the ball snapped. And if we would have ran a couple of more draws, I think we would have had some more explosive plays to keep a couple of those drives moving between the time we scored 10 points and the time we got our next points about 4 drives later. Jeff saying Tolbert needs more PT. Definitely agree with that. B. Neil Christian saying we went away from Lamb off the first quarter when he had 4 receptions for 93 yards and a touchdown till the fourth quarter. Shout outs to the graphic department. Appreciate that, Stephen White. I'm trying to do better every week. You guys take the time to come in and join me on the show. The least I can do is make the show look a little bit better aesthetically for you guys for joining in. Jeff, you've been calling for draw plays for about 7 years now. Definitely something that's been taken out of the playbook, and in certain situations it needs to come back. So I got a couple of them, and Andre Anolak saying need to feed CD when he is hot. 100% agree with that. I'll talk about that in a second because I did go back and take a look at the game and kind of analyze what happened in that lull between the time Lamb caught that touchdown and the time he got his next catch. Give me 1 minute, Andre, and I'll talk about that. Second thing, offensive line caused a lot of issues in the passing game. Just like I just said, we had a backup left tackle playing. Their defensive linemen were rushing wide, and they have some very athletic tackles. They were giving both of our guards problems, and both of their edges were giving both of our tackles problems. So Dak didn't have the time that he needed in certain situations to let certain plays open up because they were playing a zone scheme. And when a team plays a zone, sometimes you need to wait an extra tenth of a second for a wide receiver or a tight end to clear an area so that he can find a soft spot in that zone. And there were way too many times where our offensive line didn't give their player enough time to get in that zone. And I say that to lead into the third one. When they were getting into those zones, there were about 3 or 4 times where Dak just looked like he was afraid to pull the trigger because he was throwing into a zone where Jalen Ramsey and Xavier Howard were. I'm sure you guys watched the game live, and you saw a couple of times where Dak looked like he wanted to throw it, and then he kinda paused and tried to reset and move to another spot. If you look at those plays in the all 22, I believe I counted 4 of them. 3 of them were due to the fact that a player was close by Jalen Ramsey, and it looked like Dak was afraid to try to fit it in. So those 3 things just really stood out about the offense. I'm not gonna talk about the fumble. Um, I'm not gonna put that 100% on Luepke. If you go back and watch the game, that was 1st and goal on the 1. And what happened was we had just ran a play. Tony Pollard left the field, which again makes no sense to me on 1st and goal on the 1. The play clock was running down, and it looked like they were scrambling to get players in position, and it looked like they rushed the snap, and then there was just some timing issues in handing the ball off because they were rushing the play, and Luepke's not the normal single back. So, Luepke fumbled. You gotta give him some blame on it, but I blame a lot of it on the fact that they were rushing to beat the play clock. Because if you remember in that first drive, Luepke did complete 2 first downs on short yardage runs. So I know a lot of people throughout Twitterverse and Facebook were saying, well, if you got to put him in opportunities like that so that he knows not to fumble. Well, he was putting opportunities like that twice on the same drive, and he was able to hold onto the ball and convert. So I blame it a little bit more on the fact that the play calling and the play clock was running down and they had to scramble. But again, that one play was the difference in the game. If we score that touchdown, it's a completely different ball game because of how competitive our defense was um, throughout the game. So now we'll go to the defensive side of the ball, talk about some of the defensive notes I noticed. Before I get into these, I want to say kudos to our defense. That is a very explosive offense, and they held their team to 5 field goals. That team was the number 1 scoring offense in the NFL. Unlike us, who get a lot of benefits from defensive touchdowns, they do it 100% on the offensive side. So we held them 10 points below their average, pure offensive average. So you got to give kudos to the defense for holding up. Um, and number 1 should say defense. My mistake, moving too fast. The defense played great based on Miami's personnel. We did give up 1 long pass on 3rd and 9, another key point in the game. But that's what speed does. Speed can get behind you on big drives and create plays like that. Overall, I feel like we did a great job of containing their skilled players. And just like Jeff said, kudos to Jordan Lewis. We give him a lot of flack, but he had a really good game last week. Number 2, the run defense was a lot better than expected. Shouts out to Mozzie Smith. He had a much better game, even though he had a great game the week before. He had a much better game this week. Also, I noticed that we did use Carl Davis a lot more in this week's game to help clog the middle. Um, they have some very explosive receivers and running backs that go in the backfield sometimes, and our guys did a great job of containing them to not allow them to break on some long runs because there were a couple of times where Tyreek Hill was in the backfield. Achane is just a speed demon in itself. And then you got Raheem Mostert, who can break off a long run at any time. On top of that, this team uses a fullback a lot. And if you guys remember last week, I talked about I had a lot of concerns about them possibly using that fullback to block our smaller linebackers and open up some big holes. These guys did a great job of taking on the fullback. Um, Everybody did a great job of going to the running back, making tackles. Overall, run defense was stout. I'm looking forward to seeing how they continue to improve. Number 3, like I said at the beginning, they held this team to 5 field goals. If you look at this game from a defensive standpoint, it was only lost on 2 drives. The one drive right before halftime when they scored the touchdown, when for some strange reason, Dan Quinn decided to go into a prevent defense, and they just 8 and 10 yarders right down the middle, and then eventually scored a touchdown. And then on that last drive where we had the personal foul face mask, and that helped them get in the field goal range. So the defense played a really great game. I don't want to take anything away from them. This was just one of those hard-fought games. It was a coin flip game. We were the road team, and the road team lost by less than 3 points. In a situation like that, when you have 2 competitive teams and the team that's on the road loses by 3 points or less, it's hard to be upset about that because that's the NFL. Home teams are expected to win, especially if both teams are considered good teams. So I want to say shouts out to the team. They did a great job. I wish we could have got the victory, but I understand we can kind of nitpick our way through and say who did this and who did that. But for the most part, was a very good game considering the situation. And Rachel Nians, thank you for tuning in. Appreciate your support. I see the views are still going up. Those likes I would like to see those likes go up along with it. So you guys who are joining, if you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that like button so that we can get the engagement up and continue to grow the Fifth Quarter Podcast Nation. So we're at 18 minutes right now. That's pretty much all I have for the Cowboys Dolphins side of the game. Um, Now we're gonna look ahead, talk about this week's matchup because it's a huge game against an NFC rival who has solidified their division for the first time in 30 years. So they're really coming off a high, had a hard-fought game. They pretty much guaranteed themselves at least a 3 seed. They have an opportunity because of that Niners loss to maybe climb their way up to number 1. So we're definitely gonna see the best game that they have from the Detroit Lions. Rachel Nian says it's more heartbreaking that we didn't win because we should have. 100% agree, Rachel. We should have won that game, but it's hard to be upset about a road team traveling to another good team's home and losing by less than 3. But we definitely should have had it. I see we got Daniel Morris joining us. Appreciate you tuning in, Daniel Morris. Make sure you guys continue to go in the comments. Got a lot to still talk about. We got some key matchups to talk about, some X factors to talk about, and then also some over-unders. So if you're joining us now, make sure you continue to stick with us on the Fifth Quarter Podcast because we are fueled by you guys in the chat. Daniel Moore saying if the Cowboys go out there and play like they're having fun and don't forget this is the love of the sport, that they're out there, not just competition. But if they go out there and have fun, they will win. You know what, Daniel Morris? That's a great point. I tried not to look at the talking head networks, but if you look at the talking heads, you will see a lot of them say some of the reasons that we're losing those games is because we're having fun too much at other team stadiums instead of taking it serious, which completely is backwards to me. I agree with you. It's a game. They go out there, if they play loose, do what they're supposed to do, it should lead to better output instead of going in tight and being afraid of performing at your best and what'll happen if you don't. I always got to loosen up, Stephen White. Always loosen up. All right, guys. I see those likes are still going up, so thank you guys for that. And make sure at the end of the show, when you get a chance, I'm going to put the link in the comments. If you can go over to youtube.com, Bluff City Cowboys, hit that subscribe button. Help me on my path to 1,000 subscribers. Okay, so we're gonna move ahead right now. We're putting the Miami game behind us. Hard fought loss. We're gonna look ahead now to the Detroit Lions game, a huge NFC matchup against another winning team who has a lot to play for, and we're probably gonna see their best game of the year. So let's go ahead. We'll start off with some of the key matchups in this week's game.
Key matchups.
Okay, so before we talk about the key matchups, we got to go with the tail of the tape. So if you look at this team compared to the Lions just from an overall view, you'll see we're pretty evenly matched. We're ranked number 2 in scoring offense. They're number 5, 27.5 points per game. You go to scoring defense, we're both top 10. We're just below 20 points per game. They're just above 20 points per game. And then you go to the thing that's the biggest differential of all, and that's turnovers. We are +8, and they are at a -2. And for you guys that don't know what this means, if a team gives the ball up more than the defense takes it away, it's a minus. And if the team takes the ball away defensively more than the offense gives it up, you end up with a plus. So as you can see, we're still doing great. Our number has started to drop a little bit from where it was at the beginning of the year, but we're still way ahead on the turnover margins, and the Lions are just below even. But they're steady climbing towards the positive because of the play of their safeties. And that's something we're going to talk about in a minute. So yeah. 6-point differential between us, Stephen White. I believe that's what you're saying. Pretty much still a competitive game, touchdown or less. I think this is going to be a really good one. Let's go to some of our key matchups in this game in terms of player for player. When I watch the Detroit Lions play, they have a lot of talented players who can take advantage of us in certain spots. So I'm going to talk about a couple of those. And if you guys have some that you want to talk about or questions about some of the ones I talk about, be sure to hit those comments and let me know. So this is going to be the first one I talk about. And Hector Rosario, you must be psychic, because as soon as I hit the button, you put it in the comments. The first key matchup, Chuma Edoga, who I'm assuming is going to start this week, versus Aiden Hutchinson, the talented first-round pick out of Michigan from last year. This kid is having kind of a down year. He only had 6.5 sacks after having over 10 last year, but the effort is still there. This kid has a very high motor, super athletic. He has a great way of getting to the quarterback. Just not turning into sacks this year, as you guys know. Sacks are very hard to get in the NFL. Everybody can't get them. But Chuma Edoga had a lot of problems last week with Bradley Chubb, and this matchup is not going to be any easier. Like I said, this kid has an extremely high motor. He's very good against the run and the pass, which is unusual for a young edge rusher. And Chuma Edoga has a lot of issues, plain and simple. We're going to need them to help him on that side because Aiden Hutchinson has a nonstop motor. He likes to switch sides a lot, but when he finds a matchup that he really likes, his DC does a great job of keeping him there, unlike us with Micah Parsons sometimes. So if they look at the scouting report and watch last week's game, there's no doubt in my mind that Aiden Hutchinson lines up over Chuma Edoga the entire game. See, we got Roderick Atwood joining us saying Hutchinson's going to eat Edoga. I hate to say it, but I agree. Atwood, definitely looking forward to seeing if he can progress. But Aiden Hutchinson is one of those dogs that we like to talk about. The Lunatic saying Chuma, why move 73 to LT and put Chuma at left guard where it's better and more comfortable? I wish they would do it, the Lunatic. To me, it just seems like they are set. Tyler Smith is our left guard of the future, and they don't want to tinker with it anymore. That's my opinion. I don't agree with it, but it seems to me that's what it is. We're gonna let him become an all-pro left tackle and just take any doubt out of his mind that he's gonna change positions again. Because in my opinion, I would have definitely put him at left tackle. I would also like to see the rookie, Assam Richards, play some left tackle. Matt Waletzko is coming off IR. We may see him at left tackle. You never know. I'm saying the Shumi Doga. It may be Matt Waletzko. Definitely something to pay attention to in this week's game, but I'm assuming it's Chuma Doga. And if it is, we all better say a prayer and hope for the best. So I see we got a couple other people putting some of the Stephen White saying both sides, he'll kill Steele and Chuma cheeks. I 100% agree with that also. But I think the better matchup is against Edoga, and I think Hutchins is going to stay over there. And I just said the same thing, Roderick. I would rather let Richards play. I mean, he's a young guy. He can't do any worse. Let's let him build that confidence and get those reps up so that next year, if we do have to let go of Tyron Smith, Richards at least has some game film and some game reps to help us make a better decision about what to do at the future left tackle. So I see we had somebody else with another one of my key matchups they pointed out. So we'll go ahead. Next key matchup, we'll flip back and forth a little bit. We talked about Chuma Edoga versus Aiden Hutchinson. Going to our defensive end spot, you got DeMarcus Lawrence versus Penei Sewell. Penei Sewell is everything I thought he would be when he came out of college. This kid is spectacular. He's playing right tackle when he could easily play left tackle. He's just as good against the run as against the pass. Great feet, great combination of quickness and strength. There's nothing I can say negative about Penei Sewell. And DeMarcus Lawrence is going to have his hands full going against this guy in the run game because the Lions love to run on the outside with Jahmyr Gibbs, and they like to run to the right side of the line quite often because of how talented Sewell is. So this is going to be a great key matchup to pay attention to because Gibbs loves running on the right side off tackle, and he's going to run right behind Sewell's back, and it's going to be D-Law's job to try to stop him. And by the way, Jahmyr Gibbs is starting to pick up the pace a little bit, and he's got a couple of 90, 100-yard games under his belt. I think he's going to try to continue to increase those this week against Dallas. Next key matchup I want to talk about, going back to their side of the ball, their defensive side of the ball. Their offensive side of the ball, I'm sorry. Amon-Ra St. Brown versus Deron Bland. Now, I don't know if we're going to see this one as much as the fan base may think because Amon-Ra moves around quite a bit. He likes to go into the slot a lot. They like to put him in the backfield. I see we got Professor O joining us in the comments. Professor O, appreciate you tuning in. Rachel Neen saying D-Law has been playing lights out. He definitely has. This is going to be probably his toughest matchup of the year because this Penei Sewell kid is the real deal. And Professor O says they may have Taylor Decker out. That's true. If he is out, will they move Penei Sewell to left tackle is the question, or will they let him stay where he is on the right side and then just put a backup in on the left? You got to understand that to get that joke, but I definitely get it, Professor O. But yeah, Amon-Ra St. Brown moves all over the field. Extremely physical wide receiver. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Steve Smith in the way he attacks the defense and attacks the football. And he's a great route runner in his own right. Great yak guy also. So he's definitely going to have a tough matchup against Deron Bland. We haven't seen any picks or pick sixes. Amon-Ra is not the type of guy who gets a lot of separation. So I think if Deron Bland is on him, it'll be one of those games where Bland can play him a little bit closer and get a little bit closer to the football. So definitely got to pay attention to that matchup as we go into this week's game. And then we just talked about another key matchup with Penei Sewell versus D-Law. The reason I talk about that one is because of this one. Jahmyr Gibbs, rookie running back, starting to come into his own the last 4 or 5 weeks. They're starting to give him a lot more carries when David Montgomery was pretty much dominating the carries earlier in the year. Jahmyr Gibbs is a very explosive running back. He's averaging over 5 yards a carry, I believe. The kid has been balling the past 3 to 4 weeks. He had 80 yards last week, 2 touchdowns, had 100 yards the week before. Every week it seems like he's getting 6-7 yards a carry. And if you watch the tape, he does a lot of that running on the right side of the line. So it's going to be Marquise Bell's job to try to meet him at the edge and try to get him on the ground. On top of that, they started trying to get him more involved in the passing game as well. He's been averaging about 3 catches a game. And when he comes out of the backfield, it's going to pretty much be Marquise Bell's job to try to cover him. And if this kid catches an open field, it's going to be tough to stop him. So Marquise Bell definitely is going to have his hands full trying to keep up with Jahmyr Gibbs on the outside of the numbers, running the ball as well as his route running ability. And Professor O saying the Gibbs versus Bijan debate will be fun. Right now is not much of a debate, honestly, only because of the way both teams are using them. Jahmyr Gibbs is starting to really get used in his team, and I don't know what Atlanta's doing with Bijan Robinson. So by the end of the year, you look at their two stats, they may look close only because Bijan had a head start. But if you really pay attention to when Gibbs started getting runs in the offense, it's not even close. Okay, guys, we got one more key matchup to talk about, and then we'll go ahead and look at some of the X factors in this week's game. So the last key matchup I want to talk about, and I hope we see this one this week because the Lions love using their rookie tight end, Sam Laporta. He's probably the second leading receiver on the team, and Jaron Kearse has started covering the tight ends a little bit more the past couple of weeks. I hope we see a lot more of this matchup because their quarterback, Jared Goff, loves targeting Sam Laporta on third downs and big yardage plays. Sam Laporta has nine touchdowns for the year, averaging 10 yards a catch. Kid is super explosive, always making big plays for this team. Hopefully, Jaron Kearse can help us to kind of slow him down because once you go outside Laporta and Amon-Ra, they don't do a lot in the passing game. Oh, yeah, he doesn't. He definitely doesn't know what he's doing. You can see that in the amount of snaps that he's getting as well as the situations that he's giving him the ball. All right, guys, that's pretty much all the key matchups I have. There are a lot more great players in this game. I got a couple of guys that I've pointed at as potential X factors in determining the outcome of the game. Got a couple of those. Once again, we're 35 minutes. So if you're joining us right now, be sure to put your questions and comments in the chat so we can go over some of them. And just overall, let me know what you think about this week's game. So I got a couple of X factors that I want to point out. And when you watch both teams play, focus particularly on the line side of the ball. The first one is one of our players because the Lions are one of the worst teams in the NFL against the tight end position. Their safeties have been kind of in and out of the lineup, so they're still trying to figure that out. It looks like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, one of my favorite safeties in the league, he's been on IR most of the year. It looks like he has a chance to come back. So this may change a little bit this week if he does come back. But if not, their safeties and linebackers have issues covering tight ends. So I'm expecting Jake Ferguson to have a lot of good opportunities on that inside because their linebackers are over aggressive when it comes to playing against routes, and tight ends have a tendency to get open and run for chunk yardage. Question from the Lunatic. Evans being cut, do you think Wanye will see more playing time? Uh yeah, definitely. I made a Facebook post about this earlier in the DC4L group. Just talking about the overall outcry from the Cowboys fan base, talking about us cutting Rashaan Evans. And my response to that would be, look at what you're dealing with Dan Quinn since he's been here. You look at the level of linebackers he's brought in. Start off with Jabril Cox, converted safety. Damone Clark, undersized linebacker from the same school. J-Ron Curse, safety. They use him like a linebacker. He's our green dot guy. This year we draft Overshown, safety type guy. We convert Marquise Bell to a linebacker from the safety position. That's what Dan Quinn likes. And I just feel like there's a lot of fake uproar like Rashaan Evans is the only traditional linebacker we have. Why we let him go? Because Dan Quinn doesn't use traditional linebackers. Plain and simple. I would probably say Wanye Thomas had a much better chance of playing the rest of the year than Rashaan Evans anyway. So if we need to clear a spot, why not clear the spot to get the other guy on the field? On top of that, news came out shortly after he was cut that he was dealing with a marijuana possession charge. So I'm sure that had a lot to do with it as well. And lastly, this is unrelated to your question, the Lunatic, but remember, Rashaan Evans started off on our practice squad. So more than likely to make space, he's dealing with the drug thing right now. So certain teams are probably not going to touch him. So more than likely, he's going to clear waivers. So if he clears waivers, we already know he has no problems being on our practice squad. So more than likely, in 48 hours, he's going to be right back on the roster on our practice squad. And he may even get called up for this week. So I definitely think Wanye has a chance to see more playing time. But I would not be shocked to see Evans back on the team by Friday morning and possibly getting called up on Sunday for the game. And Stephen White saying Evans got popped with weed. And Don Weaver, thank you for joining us, Don. Great beard too, by the way. Saying our O-line was poop emoji. All right, guys, let me get back to it. Talk about a couple more X factors that I have for this week's game. So now we'll go to the line side of the ball again. And I just talked about Jake Ferguson and how they're bad against tight ends. This guy's one of those reasons why they're bad against tight ends. Now, he's not a bad player at all. To me, he's the heart and soul of this defense. Alex Anzalone, a former New Orleans Saint, just a tough-nosed, high-motor guy. He's going to be around the ball on every tackle. He's going to bring a lot of energy and passion to that team. He has the ability to make big plays for them that helps to boost that defense. He also, in the same breath, has the ability, because of his over-aggressiveness, to leave gaps open and let teams get huge chunk yardage in the run and the passing game. So pay close attention to this kid in the middle of the field, Alex Anzalone. You're going to hear his name called one way or the other. Let's hope it's on the negative side of the ball and not the positive. But you're going to see a lot of him throughout this week's matchup. The Lunatic saying, wouldn't it be like San Francisco or Philly to pick up Evans just to hurt us? You know, I could see the Eagles possibly picking up Evans. That's a great point. But you never know. I mean, he's dealing with the drug thing. Sometimes teams may shy away from that. You never know what that'll lead to in the locker room or just from a moral standpoint. My best guess is he clears waivers, but Philly would definitely be at the top of their list of teams that will possibly try to pick him up. The only issue with that is he's pretty much a poor man Shaq Leonard at this point. So would they continue to be just derivative in the type of guys they pick up? Because you have to remember, if a team picks up a guy off waivers, they do have to drop someone off their team. So it's not as simple as we could just pick them up for free. We're at week 17. Most of these teams are set with what they have. It's going to be a tough choice for a team who's a playoff competitor to drop someone who's been on the team all year to pick up a guy who doesn't know your scheme, who hasn't performed at all this year, and he's dealing with legal issues. That's a lot to ask for a team to do. Maybe if it's a bad team who just wants to fill in a spot for the rest of the year. For a good team, it's less likely that they would pick up a guy like Evans. Jeff saying CD is an X factor. They have no one who can cover him. That's definitely true, Jeff. But when I try to give X factors, I like to give guys who the fan base doesn't know who can have an impact on the game. We all know CD Lamb is that dude. I could put him as the X factor every week, but I try to shed light on a couple of guys who are under the radar who can have a big impact on games. But since you brought up the wide receiver position, I'm going to give you an X factor from the Lions that we all need to be aware of, and that's Jameson Williams, former wide receiver from the Alabama Crimson Tide. This kid missed all of last year. He's coming back in this year, kind of getting his feet wet. He's starting to contribute a little bit in the offense. He has legit 4.3 speed. And you guys know how we have issues with speed on the outside, particularly with Stephon Gilmore. So you're definitely going to see this kid have some opportunities to make some big plays. He hasn't really been put in the scheme this year. They've been going a lot with Amon-Ra and Josh Reynolds. But you can kind of see the targets continue to creep up for Jameson Williams. The past 2 weeks, he's had 6 targets, 6+ targets, 40 yards. I think that number is only going to go up, and I could see possibly this week being one of those games where he may be a 10-target guy. So these are just a few of the X factor guys I want you guys to pay attention to as you watch this week's game against the Detroit Lions, particularly Jameson Williams and Alex Anzalone on defense. I think those guys have an opportunity to make a big impact towards the outcome of this game. So that's pretty much all I have with key matchups. We are at the 45-minute mark, so it looks like we are going to get out of here in less than an hour. So before we get out of here, I want to touch base on a couple of over-unders, and then we'll get you guys' opinion on that. For you guys who are joining us for the first time, over-under is a segment where I'll give you a player and a statistic, and you tell me whether or not you think that player goes over or under on that stat. But before we do that, I see we got a question from my guy, the Lunatic, and he says, look at Lions roster. It's good. We facing them at home and not in Ford Field. Yeah, they definitely have a competitive roster. I mean, offensive line alone, that team is tough to deal with. You throw in the fact that they have a coach who does not mind running the ball consistently. They have 2 very good running backs. They have several key guys in the skill game. And then they also have some very good safeties. Kirby Wilson is a very underrated safety. In my opinion, he doesn't do well 15 yards and under. But if you're throwing it deep, he tracks the ball just as good as any safety in the league. I already talked about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who may be coming back this week, who in my opinion may be a top 5 safety in the NFL right now. And then they got a couple of young cornerbacks who are still growing and developing. Hector Rosario asking a question, and great question. Over under Lions getting called once for holding Micah. I'm a betting man, Hector, and I would probably take the under on that based off of recent history. That shouldn't be the case, but I would probably have to take the under. Ryan at DC Diner saying Kirby did wonders for my dynasty team this year. And underrated or under the radar is a great way to describe the Detroit Lions this year. That's a great point. They're definitely flying under the radar. Probably going to end up being a 2 seed in my opinion. Talented roster. They're just still young and inexperienced in terms of the team as well as the coaching staff, and they're still working on getting it together. Hopefully the lights aren't too bright for them once they actually get in the playoffs. All right, guys, let's get into it with a couple of these over-unders, and then we'll call it a show and get ready for some NFL football on Sunday. So here we go with over-under.
Over-under.
All right, so the first over-under, talked about Jahmyr Gibbs. He's had 90 yards rushing the past 2 weeks. He's also contributing more in the receiving game. You guys know how up and down our running defense can be. So let me know over under 100 total yards for Jahmyr Gibbs. That's rushing and receiving. Over under 100 yards. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Okay. Seems like we have a lot of people who don't have much faith in our run defense. So we got the Lunatic saying our run defense will be on the microscope again, and then Jimmy's Ring of Honor ceremony. Ryan at DC Diner coming with a quick over. The Lunatic coming right behind him with an over easy. B. Neil Christian saying over. Okay, pretty much everybody saying over. Rachel Niens said under. Stephen White said over. Hector Rosario saying under only because we're at home. I think they're going to try to run the ball at us. Remember, Dan Campbell is a former Cowboy. I think he's going to want to try to run the ball right down our throats, show that he's going to be more physical than us. He always screamed physicality and toughness and hard-nosed grinding whenever you hear him talking. So I think they're going to run the ball quite a bit. And I think he's going to have some opportunities. I'm leaning over on this one as well, as much as I hate to say it. They also do still have David Montgomery, who's there between the tackles runner. I think he's going to get quite a few carries also. But I still think Jahmyr Gibbs, just because of his explosiveness, has a chance to make 1 or 2 big plays that tilt the yardage in his favor. Okay, so now we'll talk about both tight ends. We talked about in key matchups that we have Jaron Kearse, our tight end stopper, but this team relies heavily on the tight end position in their offense. So over under 60 receiving yards for Sam Laporta in this week's game. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Over under 60 receiving yards, Sam Laporta. All right. Ryan at DC Diner going with over. Another quick over, Ryan. Looks like you expect this offense to perform pretty well against our defense based off how quick you're responding. B. Neil Christian saying over, Jeff saying over, the Lunatic saying under, but close to 50. I think I'm along the lines of you, the Lunatic. I think we can hold them under 60 yards, but it's gonna be close. Randy Barron looks like a new name. Thank you for joining us. I see you're also joining us from YouTube. So while you're there, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And then also Stephen White has over as well. Rachel Nians continue to be optimistic with the under, and Hector Rosario also saying under. I'm hoping it's gonna be under. I have a lot of faith in J-Ron Curse. I think he can help get the job done. While Sam Laporta is a very talented tight end, he's not a very big tight end. He's only like 6'3", 240. So it's not like he can just out physical or dominate a guy like a J-Ron Curse. They're essentially the same size and athleticism in terms of traits. So hopefully J-Ron Curse is able to stick with them and help cut out a lot of catches, because he's probably going to get about 8 or 9 targets this game. So I'm going off my feelings about J-Ron Curse, and I'm going under also. Okay, guys, we talked about the Lions tight end. Let's talk about our tight end, Jake Ferguson, a guy who for the past month has quickly become one of the key options in our offensive scheme. I just mentioned the Detroit Lions are bottom 5 in terms of covering the tight end position. Jake Ferguson is going to be a security blanket, I think, for this team this week. Lions run a lot of zone. They use the linebackers in coverage a lot. And Alex Anzalone has problems with over pursuing. And they have the rookie, I believe his name is Jack Campbell, if I'm not mistaken. He still is learning the nuances of playing the zone pass coverage. So there's going to be some openings in there that I think Jake Ferguson can take advantage of. Over under 60 yards receiving Jake Ferguson. Donna had one of his better games last week. Jake Hurst's turn versus Detroit. I agree. I would say Donovan Wilson had a better game because they started playing him more like a linebacker than in coverage. But yeah, I think J-Ron Curse definitely is going to have his turn in the pass coverage. Hector Rosario saying over. Ryan the DC Diner saying over. B. Neil Christian over. Stephen White, Captain Jack Campbell. Diane Simmons joining us from the island of St. Croix. Definitely appreciate you tuning in. Always great to see Cowboys fans from across the country and across the world. So thank you for joining us on the Fifth Quarter podcast tonight. Stephen White saying over. The Lunatic, you know, I like to call out cop-outs, saying it's a push. But you're saying only because Cooks will have bigger numbers. So I'll give you a pass on that with the Lunatic. 60 yards is a push. Jeff saying over. Jeff's calling a shootout in this game. Hopefully we come in on the winning side of that shootout, Jeff. I'm leaning over also. Just watching Detroit play, they leave a lot of opportunities out there for tight ends, and I think we're going to take advantage of it. So I'm leaning over also. If I force your hand, gun to your head, you're going under. All right, thank you, the Lunatic. Now, you mentioned that only Cooks would have bigger numbers. I have some serious concerns about this, only because I talked about the safety Kirby Wilson. He's great at tracking deep balls. And if they try to use Cooks as a deep guy, Kirby Johnson's going to be right there. And if Chauncey Gardner-Johnson comes back, Kirby Wilson, my mistake. And if Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is back this week and they have both of their safeties, I don't know if we're going to be throwing the ball deep on them too much, or we're going to have a lot of problems in the turnover category. B. Neil Christian saying Dak will be over 300 yards this week. I think so also. I don't think we're going to have a lot of 20, 30-yard passes, but I think we can 10, 15 yard our way into a victory. And I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for Yak because, like I said before, they run a lot of zone and they're not disciplined on the inside. And that'll lead to guys like Jake Ferguson and CeeDee Lamb making some big run after catch opportunities. Okay, so I got another over-under for you guys. I think this is my last one of the night. So you guys know whenever I do my last over-under, I always do an either or. So we've been talking about both receivers pretty much all show. Which receiver has more receiving yards? CeeDee Lamb or Amon-Ra St. Brown? I think they both, in my opinion, have some very good opportunities. Amon-Ra probably gets targeted as much, if not more, than CeeDee Lamb. They both spend a lot of time in the slot. They're both great yak guys. So who gets more receiving yards this week, Amon-Ra or CeeDee Lamb? The lunatic essentially saying the squeaky wheel gets the oil. 88 has spoken this week. Big Mike better listen up. Yeah, definitely agree. Whenever a wide receiver says something in the media, they normally do get rewarded the week after. So I do look for CeeDee Lamb to get a lot of targets. I don't think it'll be as bad as it was last week. Ryan the DC Diner saying CD. Hector saying CD. Diane also saying CD. And B. Neil Christian coming in saying CD will have 150 and a touchdown. I definitely think CD is going to have a great game this week, just because of all the stuff I talked about before. I do expect Amon-Ra to make some plays just because he's targeted so heavily in that passing game that he's going to get his stats. But I agree. I think CD is going to come out on top in this battle between those two wide receivers. So I brought up earlier in the show when I was talking about how CD did not get targeted in a gap in the game. So when you go back and watch the tape, there were 5 drives between the time that CD caught that last touchdown and the next time that he caught a pass. So just real quick, I'm going to go through those 5 drives just to give you an idea of what happened. The first drive, we were pinned at the 3-yard line. Dak was pretty much scrambling. He didn't want to get a holding call in the end zone for a safety. He pretty much just threw 3 bad passes, playing in survival mode, and then we punted. Second drive, we tried to establish the run. So we had 2 runs, then we got a penalty, and then on third down, it was a busted play. CD didn't get opportunity. Nobody got opportunity. So then the third drive, another great punt by the Dolphins. We were at the probably 2-yard line, I believe. Another situation, the offense scrambled. Dak trying not to get a safety. They just did some super conservative plays to try to move the ball out of the red zone. Didn't work. We had to punt. Then on that fourth drive, that was the drive where we had the deep ball to Tolbert. So I understand why CD didn't get the ball right there. I mean, we had a big play to Cooks. We turned around, had another big play to Tolbert. The only play in that drive where Lamb could have gotten the ball was when they had the double screen passes and they decided to throw it to Gallup instead of Lamb. Personally, I would have thrown it to Lamb, but when you look at that play over again, Lamb was on the long side of the field and Gallup was on the short side of the field. So when you're throwing a screen, you naturally don't want to throw it at the long side of the field because bad things can happen. On top of that, on Lamb's side, he had a wide receiver and Jake Ferguson blocking. On Gallup's side, he had the guard and the tackle pulling out. So from just schematically, if you're running a play where you want to have blockers in front, are you going to throw it to the side where you have linemen or wide receivers? So personally, I probably would have still thrown it to CeeDee Lamb because he's our best receiver and he's great after the catch. But I understand the reason why he threw it to Gallup. On top of that, Lamb did have a touch in that drive. He just didn't have a catch. And then on that fifth drive, that was the what the hell Edoga drive where on third down, it looked like Lamb was wide open, but Edoga completely whiffed on the block and Dak didn't have enough time to get it to him. So that was kind of a breakdown of the 5 drives where Lamb didn't touch the ball. Again, out of those 5 drives, I would say 4 of them, Lamb probably should have got the ball. I mean, one of them one of those 5, I can say Lamb probably should have found a way to get the ball. The other 4, it's just circumstance. I don't think they weren't targeting him. I just still think it was just circumstance in those situations. The lunatic saying you still keep your superstar in the game, not take him out yourself. Even Romo would tell Dez you getting the ball. I mean, that's a good point. But sometimes situations just make it hard to get it to your star guy. And another aspect of their game I didn't talk about. After Lamb caught that touchdown, you could see the Dolphins start to use more bracket coverage on Lamb on the inside, where they had a guy on him in the slot, and then that linebacker would immediately just show, like, I'm taking the inside away from Lamb while he's in the slot. That's one of the reasons why the inside opened up so much, and I thought they should have ran the ball more on the inside, because that linebacker was completely bailing whenever Lamb was in the slot. So they did a good job of taking that away. That plus the fact that our offensive line wasn't really holding up to allow Lamb to clear those 2 guys. That was a lot of the reasons why we couldn't really make a lot happen on those 5 drives and get Lamb the ball. But overall, it was still a good game from the Dolphins. Expecting a great game this week. I think it's going to be, like Jeff said, a shootout. 2 very good offenses with a lot to play for. We're going back home off a 2-game skid. The Lions are trying to prove that they're legit in the NFL and the NFC. 11-4 right now for the Lions, so they still have opportunity to get that 1 or 2 seed. B. Neil Christian saying I still would have taken my chances with Lamb. The ones in the red zone, you can't take a chance, B. Neil. That's my whole point. If you're in the red zone and they're basically double teaming your star receiver, you got to try to get it out to somebody else quickly. They tried to get it to Ferguson, who was the guy who was open, because they were doubling Lamb so hard, but Dak just didn't have enough time to find him. As you guys saw, he threw a couple at his feet, a couple over his head. On the other drives, we can have that discussion, but on those back of the end zone drives, you just got to try to get the ball out of the end zone. The lunatic giving us an early game prediction, saying this will be a shootout, but we at home. Dallas 42, Detroit 33. We will have a pregame show this week. I don't have anything planned. As soon as I get out of church, I'm coming right back here. So be sure to join us this Sunday at 11:15 Central Standard Time for our pregame show. We'll give you our last-minute injury report to let you guys know who's playing and who's out for this week's game. We'll also do our game predictions. We'll do our bowl predictions, which we haven't done in quite some time. And then I'll also give you guys some fantasy favorites to help you in what's probably the championship game for a lot of your leagues. So be sure to join us this Sunday, 11:15 Central Standard Time for our pregame show. And as always, you can join us every Wednesday, 8:30 Central Standard Time for the Fifth Quarter Podcast. Thank you guys for joining us. I always appreciate coming on. You guys are always great with your questions and your comments. You guys fuel the Fifth Quarter Podcast. And thank you guys for correcting me, because the game is this Saturday. I'm available this Saturday also. So that pregame show will be at 11:15 Central Standard Time this Saturday. This is why I love the Fifth Quarter fan base. You guys always keep me on track. Thank you guys for that. So join us back again this Saturday, 11:15 Central Standard Time for our pregame show. And as I just said before, you can join us every Wednesday, 8:30 Central Standard Time for the Fifth Quarter Podcast, as we hopefully celebrate Victory Wednesday and look ahead to the last game of the season against the Washington Commanders. We'll probably have a couple of special guests joining us because it is the last game of the season. We'll probably give away as well. So make sure you guys join us back for that. And as always, appreciate you guys' support. Be sure to like, be sure to subscribe, be sure to follow. Join the Fifth Quarter Podcast Nation. and join the DC4L Facebook group so that you can be in touch with all the news and notes and just interact with Cowboys fans. I will see you guys this Saturday. And as always, let's go Cowboys, guys.